My wife texted me 4 words. Just having coffee with a friend. I already knew who that friend was. I already knew his wife's name too. So I typed back 1 sentence, hit send, and watched 3 little dots appear, then disappear, then nothing. For 10 minutes, nothing. What I said in that text ended a 9-year marriage before she even finished her coffee. Let me back up and show you how we got there. My name is Daniel. For a long time, if you'd asked me to describe my life, I would have used the word solid. Not perfect, not a fairy tale, just solid. Married 9 years to a woman named Megan. We met in our mid-20s, back when neither of us had much money and all our furniture came from other people's curbs. We built things slowly, a townhouse, 2 decent cars, a dog named Biscuit who Megan swore she never wanted, and then fell in love with the day we brought him home. I worked in operations for a mid-sized logistics company. Steady paycheck, not flashy but reliable. Megan worked in marketing for a regional healthcare group. She was good at her job, the kind of good where her name came up in meetings she wasn't even in. We used to joke that between the two of us, we had one whole competent adult. On paper, we looked like the couple other couples envied a little. We hosted a Friday dinner once a month for friends. Megan made a lasagna that people requested by name. I grilled badly and everyone pretended not to notice. We took a trip every year, nothing extravagant, just somewhere neither of us had been. We had inside jokes that had lasted so long, neither of us remembered where they started. If you'd asked me, in the spring of that year, whether my marriage was happy, I would have said yes without blinking. Not because I was naive. Because it was true, as far as I could see it. What you didn't see, sitting across from us at those Friday dinners, was the storm building on the other side of my family. My mother had passed away 18 months earlier, and what should have been a quiet, respectful process of settling her small estate had turned into something ugly. My 2 siblings, my older brother Patrick and my younger sister Claire, had convinced themselves I'd mishandled things. I was the one who'd lived closest to her. I was the one who'd managed her finances in her last 2 years, made the hard calls about her care, sat with the lawyers, signed the forms nobody wants to sign. And now, months later, they were accusing me of moving money around for myself, of shorting them on what was owed, of taking advantage of a dying woman who trusted me. None of it was true. I had bank statements, I had receipts, I had a paper trail so clean you could serve dinner on it. But grief doesn't listen to paper trails. Patrick stopped answering my calls. Claire sent me a message so cold I read it twice, just to make sure I hadn't misunderstood it. Family group chats went quiet, then hostile, then quiet again in a way that felt worse than hostile. I carried that weight home every night. I'd sit at the kitchen table with a folder of documents, going through line by line, trying to figure out how to prove something to people who didn't want proof. They wanted a villain, and I was the only one standing close enough to blame. Megan watched all of this happen. In the beginning, she was exactly who I needed. She sat with me. She helped me organize the documents. She told me, more than once, that none of this was my fault, that grief makes people cruel to the people who loved the same person they lost. I remember thinking, more than once, that I didn't know what I would have done without her that year. But somewhere around month 10 of the estate fight, something in her shifted. It was subtle. The kind of thing you only notice in hindsight, when you're forced to go back and replay every scene like a detective, looking for the first frame where things went wrong. She started sighing when I brought up the lawyers. Small sighs, barely audible. She'd changed the subject faster than she used to. One night, when I mentioned that Claire had sent another email accusing me of hiding a bank account that didn't exist, Megan set down her fork and said quietly, "Daniel, I love you, but I am so tired of this being our whole life." I remember apologizing. I remember feeling guilty for burdening her with my family's mess, as if the mess was something I'd created instead of something that had landed on me. I told her I understood. I told her I'd try to talk about it less. I didn't know yet that tired of this being our whole life wasn't really about the estate fight at all. I didn't know she'd already started looking for somewhere else to put her attention. I didn't know that 3 weeks later, at a work conference 2 hours away, she'd meet a man named Ryan, a married colleague from a partner company, charming in that easy, rehearsed way some men have, and that something between them would start that night with nothing more than a drink at a hotel bar and a conversation that went on far longer than either of them would admit to later. All I knew at the time was that Megan started texting more from her phone, with the screen tilted slightly away from me. A small thing. The kind of thing you'd miss completely if you weren't the type to notice details. I noticed it. I just didn't understand yet what it meant. It's strange, looking back, how the mind protects itself. I noticed things. I just didn't let myself connect them. The first thing was her phone. Megan had never been precious about her phone before. She left it on the counter, face up, no lock screen for years. Then one Tuesday, I picked it up to check the time. Mine was charging in the other room, and there was a passcode, a new one. She'd never mentioned changing it. "Since when do you lock your phone?" I asked, half joking. "Since work started emailing patient data to my personal inbox by mistake," she said. HR made everyone lock their phones. Compliance thing. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like something HR would actually do. I let it go. Then came the late nights. Megan had always worked hard, but that spring, working late, started happening too, sometimes 3 nights a week. She'd come home around 8 or 9, tired in a way that didn't quite match how she described her day. I'd ask how work was, and she'd give me short answers, the kind of answers people give when they're saving their energy for a conversation they'd rather not have with you. One night she came home smelling different. Not bad, just different. A perfume I didn't recognize, sweeter than what she usually wore. When I mentioned it, she laughed it off. Sarah from accounting was giving out samples. Some conference swag thing. Again plausible. Again I let it go. I want to be honest with you about something. During this period, I wasn't suspicious because I trusted her completely. I was distracted. My family situation had gotten worse, not better. Patrick had hired a lawyer. An actual lawyer, to go after his own brother over an estate worth less than a used car, out of pure spite dressed up as principal. I was spending my evenings responding to legal letters, instead of noticing the woman across the table from me was becoming someone I didn't fully recognize. But there's a particular kind of guilty reaction that's hard to miss once you finally start looking for it. It happened on a Sunday. We were at brunch with 2 other couples, old friends of ours, and someone brought up a work trip Megan had taken the month before. An industry conference 2 hours out of town. One of our friends, trying to make conversation, asked, "Did you run into Ryan Bell out there? I heard he was speaking on a panel." Megan's face did something I'd never seen it do before. It wasn't much. A half-second freeze, a too-quick recovery, a laugh that came out 1 beat late. "Oh yeah, actually, I think I saw him in the lobby." Small world. Then she changed the subject to the coffee, which she said was terrible, and everyone moved on, everyone except me. I didn't say anything that day. I told myself I was being paranoid, that a strange look over brunch wasn't evidence of anything, that a year of family betrayal had made me suspicious of everyone, including the one person who didn't deserve it. I told myself all of that, and some part of me even believed it, for about 4 more days. Then I noticed the passwords had changed again. Not just her phone, her laptop, her email, an app she used for scheduling, all within the same week. When I asked, almost joking, if she was hiding a secret double life, she snapped at me. Actually snapped, sharper than I'd ever heard her. "Can I not have privacy in my own house, Daniel?" I backed off immediately. I apologized, even though I wasn't sure what I was apologizing for. But that night, lying next to her, staring at the ceiling, I felt something shift permanently in my chest. Not proof, not yet. Just a cold, quiet certainty that something in my house had changed shape while I wasn't looking, and I was the only one who hadn't been told. I started paying attention differently after that. Not confronting her, watching. I noticed she'd started taking her phone into the bathroom when she showered. I noticed she'd started deleting her call log, something I only discovered by accident when I borrowed her phone to look up a restaurant and saw a call history that went back exactly 2 days. 2 days. In a 9-year marriage, that was new. The clue that finally broke through my denial came on a Thursday. Megan told me she was going out with the girls for a coworker's birthday. I dropped her off near the restaurant myself, since her car was in the shop. As I pulled away, I glanced in my rearview mirror out of habit, and I saw her standing on the sidewalk, not walking toward the restaurant, but toward the parking garage across the street, where a car I didn't recognize was already waiting, engine running, driver's side window down just enough for me to see a man's arm resting on the frame. I didn't stop the car. I didn't confront her right there on the street like some movie scene. I just kept driving, both hands tight on the wheel, my heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. I knew, in that moment, with total clarity, that whatever the girls meant to Megan that night, it didn't mean what she'd told me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to her when she finally came home at 11:30, smelling like a different restaurant than the one she'd claimed to be at. And I said nothing. I let her fall asleep beside me while I stared at the dark ceiling and made a decision. I wasn't going to accuse her based on a feeling. I wasn't going to let this become another version of the estate fight, where I was pointing a finger with nothing but instinct behind it. If something was happening, I needed proof. Real proof. The kind that couldn't be explained away with a story about HR compliance or conference swag. So I became patient, quiet, methodical, the same way I'd learned to be with my mother's finances, the same way that had kept me sane through a year of my siblings trying to burn me for something I didn't do. It took me 11 days. The first real thread came from something almost embarrassingly simple, a credit card statement. We had one joint card for household expenses, and Megan had her own personal card for things she didn't want to explain, which I'd never questioned before, because that's what a healthy marriage looks like. Some separation, some privacy, no need to account for every dollar. But that month, a joint account statement arrived, showing an automatic transfer she'd set up from our shared savings into her personal account. Small amount. $200, moved quietly, twice. I didn't say anything, I just started looking closer. I found the hotel charge by accident, the way most people find the truth. Not through some dramatic detective effort, but because Megan got careless. She'd used the joint card once, just once, for what she thought was a work-related expense reimbursement. A boutique hotel 2 towns over, the kind of place people go for anniversaries, not accounting conferences. When I looked up the reservation details online using the confirmation number from the statement, it wasn't booked under a company name. It was booked under 2 names, hers and his, Ryan Bell. I sat with that name for a long time. I thought about brunch. I thought about the half-second freeze on her face. I thought about the perfume, the passwords, the car in the parking garage with its engine running. I wanted more than a name on a hotel reservation. I wanted certainty I could stand on, because I knew myself. I knew if I confronted her with anything less than absolute proof, she would find a way to explain it, and some tired, hopeful part of me would let her. So I kept watching. I noted the pattern of her late nights against a work calendar. I quietly cross-referenced with her actual meeting schedule, information I still had access to through an old shared calendar we'd never bothered to disconnect. The gaps were obvious once I was actually looking for them. 2-hour windows that didn't match anything on her calendar, always on the same 2 days of the week. The final piece came from something almost too easy. Megan had linked her photo backup to our old shared family cloud account years ago and forgotten about it, the same way people forget half the digital tethers they've set up over a decade together. I wasn't looking for anything when I opened it. I was looking for a picture of Biscuit as a puppy, something to send my sister-in-law who'd asked about him. Instead, sorted right there by date were photos Megan had clearly meant to delete and simply hadn't gotten around to. A dinner table for 2. A hand, not mine, resting on hers. A screenshot of a text conversation, visible just long enough in a background reflection of a hotel mirror for me to read 3 words before I closed the app. Can't stop thinking. I sat on the edge of our bed with my phone in my hand and felt something in me go completely, permanently still. Not rage, not yet. Something colder than rage, a kind of clarity. I thought about the year I'd just survived. My mother gone, my siblings turned against me over money I'd never touched. And now this. The one person who'd sat beside me through all of it, who'd told me none of it was my fault, who'd held my hand at the lawyer's office, had spent that same year building an entire second life 2 hours down the highway with a married man named Ryan Bell. I could have confronted her that night. Some part of me wanted to throw the phone on the bed and demand she explain the hotel, the money, the photos, the lies stacked on lies. But I didn't. I made myself sit with the anger until it turned into something more useful, something quieter. I closed the app. I set my phone down. And I decided, with total calm, that Megan was not going to find out what I knew until I was ready for her to find out. Whatever came next, I wasn't going to hand her the chance to spin it, soften it, or turn it into something that was somehow my fault too. I had spent a year being accused of things I didn't do. I was done being anybody's villain. If anyone in this house had a bill coming due, it wasn't going to be me. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I went to work. I came home. I sat across from Megan at dinner and asked about her day. And she told me small, easy lies, and I nodded and asked follow-up questions like a man who still believed her. It felt at times like being an actor in a play where I was the only one who'd read the whole script. But underneath that calm surface, I was building something. The first thing I did was talk to a lawyer. Not to threaten anyone, not to plan anything dramatic, just to understand exactly where I stood. Our state was a no-fault divorce state, which meant infidelity wouldn't automatically change how assets got split. But it did mean something else, something more important to me than punishment. It meant I needed clean documentation of our joint finances before anything else happened, so nothing could quietly disappear, and no story could later be rewritten about who had been careful with money and who hadn't. I already had a full year of practice building airtight financial paper trails. My mother's estate had trained me well, in the ugliest possible way. I moved a portion of my own savings, money I'd earned before we married, and kept in a separate account out of old habit, somewhere she had no visibility into. Not to hide it. To protect it, cleanly and legally, the way any lawyer would tell you to before a marriage ends. I documented every joint account, every transfer she'd quietly made, every charge with a hotel's name on it. I built a folder as thorough as the one that had once saved me from my own siblings' accusations. This time, it wasn't going to defend me. It was going to speak for itself. The second thing I did was slower and harder. I let Megan keep living exactly as she had been. I didn't change my behavior. I didn't get colder or warmer. I didn't ask more questions about her schedule. I wanted her to feel completely safe, completely unseen, right up until the moment that safety stopped being true. There's a particular kind of confidence people carry when they believe they're getting away with something. Megan had it fully now. A lightness in how she moved through the house. A woman who believed her secret was still a secret. I found out, through a mutual friend who had no idea what she was really telling me, that Ryan Bell's wife, a woman named Christine, worked at a non-profit downtown and had no idea her husband had been spending his business trips at a boutique hotel 2 towns over. That detail sat with me for a few days. I wasn't interested in destroying a stranger's marriage out of spite, but I was interested in the truth, reaching the people who deserved to have it, rather than staying buried under a pile of convenient lies that only benefited the 2 people who'd built them. I decided the plan would have 3 parts, and all 3 had to happen close together, so Megan never had time to get ahead of any single piece. First, I would finish quietly separating our finances the legal way, so that whatever came next, I wasn't standing on unstable ground. Second, I would let the truth reach the one other person who had as much right to know it as I did. Not through some ugly public scene, but through a simple, factual message. Third, and this was the part I thought about longest, I would choose my own moment to confront Megan directly, on my terms, not hers, so that for once in this entire year, I wasn't the one reacting to someone else's mess. I picked my moment carefully. Megan had a coffee with a friend planned for a Saturday morning, the same phrase she'd used twice before, always on the days that lined up with the gaps in her calendar. I already knew by then exactly who that friend was. That morning, she got ready with more care than a coffee outing usually requires. She kissed me on the cheek on her way out the door, told me she'd be back by noon, and drove off in the car I had spent a decade helping her afford. I sat at our kitchen table, the same table where I'd spent a year going through my mother's finances, line by line, trying to prove my innocence to people who didn't want proof. This time, the folder in front of me wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was simply the truth, organized and ready. My phone buzzed. A text from Megan, just having coffee with a friend. I looked at that message for a long moment. Then I typed my reply, read it twice, and hit send. Ask him if his wife liked the hotel receipt I found. I set the phone down on the table, face up, and waited. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then they vanished. Then nothing, for what felt like a very long 10 minutes. When Megan finally walked through our front door, she wasn't the woman who'd left an hour earlier with a light step and an easy kiss on my cheek. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking slightly as she set her keys down. "Daniel, I can explain." "You don't have to," I said. I wasn't yelling. I didn't need to. I already know. I've known for a while. I slid the folder across the table toward her. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what was inside it, because she was the one who'd built the trail I'd simply followed. I told her calmly what would happen next. I had already filed. Our finances were already properly separated, documented, and clean. I wasn't interested in a messy fight over money, because I had spent an entire year fighting my own family over money that wasn't even about money. It was about people needing someone to blame. I wasn't going to become that for her. I was simply going to walk away with everything that was legally and fairly mine, and let her keep whatever she'd built for herself on the other side of this. The one thing I did allow myself was that single text message. Christine, Ryan's wife, received a short factual email from me later that same day. No accusations, no drama, just documented dates and a hotel confirmation with both their names on it. What she chose to do with that information was entirely up to her. As it turned out, she chose the same thing I did. She left. Megan tried, in the weeks that followed, to control how the story spread among our friends and family. She told people I had become paranoid and bitter after my mother's estate dispute, that I'd started imagining things that weren't there, that the divorce was really about my unresolved anger toward my siblings spilling over onto her. It was a good story. It might even have worked if the truth hadn't already reached the people who mattered, quietly, through nothing dramatic, just documented facts, finding their way to honest ears over time. I never once publicly corrected her version of events. I didn't need to. I simply lived my life, and let people draw their own conclusions from the difference between what she said and what they could see with their own eyes. That year, I also finally resolved things with Patrick and Claire. It turned out that once the fog of grief started lifting, and once Patrick's lawyer actually looked closely at the documentation I'd kept, the whole accusation fell apart on its own. Patrick called me on a Sunday afternoon, almost a year to the day after our mother passed, and apologized. Claire took a little longer, but she came around too. We split what remained of our mother's small estate fairly, the way she would have wanted. I used my share, along with the money I'd protected during the divorce, to buy a small, run-down duplex that nobody else in the family wanted to deal with. I fixed it up on weekends, rented it out, and within 2 years, that single property had become 3. What started as the ugliest year of my life ended up building the foundation for a real estate business I still run today. Megan, meanwhile, didn't fare so well. Word travels in small industries, and word traveled in ours. 2 relationships after our divorce ended, before they really began. Once new partners heard the full story from mutual friends who no longer felt any need to protect her narrative. A few years later, she reached out to me, older, quieter, asking if we could talk. Some worn-down, hopeful part of me, the same part that had once believed every explanation she'd ever given me. Let her back in just a little, just to see. She hadn't changed. I found out, 3 months into cautiously letting her back into my life, that she was quietly messaging another man, an old contact from her work days. In that same familiar tone I now recognized instantly. This time there was no year of denial, no 11 days of quiet investigation. I simply showed her, calmly, what my life actually looked like now. The business, the peace, the people around me who trusted me and whom I trusted back. I told her she'd had more than one chance to become someone worth trusting, and she'd spent every single one of them on someone else. Then I left, for good. I heard much later, through the same slow drift of mutual acquaintances, that the man she'd been messaging eventually found out about her pattern too. He didn't stay either. Megan ended up exactly where her choices had been quietly leading her all along. Alone, with a story about herself that fewer and fewer people believed, and no one left willing to pick up the pieces she kept leaving behind. Sometimes the most satisfying ending isn't watching someone get destroyed. It's watching them finally receive the bill for everything they broke, and realizing there's no one left willing to pay it for them. That's all for today on Cheating Lady Files. Like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, would you have walked away this calmly?